Welcome into this episode of Coach's Corner. Jordan Woodruff with you. Great to have you along. As this episode brought to you by Skyway, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram here in Ponca City. And we're joined, first time getting a chance to talk to him, head coach of boys wrestling, Stephen Moore. And Coach, really glad to have you along and excited about you being here in Ponca City.
Sure, happy to be here.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
And I think the first thing I always like to do when we get a new coach is let's talk about your background. Kind of, let's start in high school. And all the way up to what got you here ultimately at Ponca City.
I graduated from Pawhuska. Started wrestling when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Wrestled. My dad was my coach till I was in junior high. Wrestled for Pawhuska junior high and high school. I don't know, probably about 122 and 18 or so in a high school career. All-stater, 4-time placer. We had a pretty good team. We're part of a dual state runner-up team. Also state tournament team, so we had a lot of success coming up. A lot of those kids wrestled for my dad, and had a good group that came through. And much like you see in Oklahoma wrestling, you see a team that kind of comes out of nowhere. It's usually a good group of kids that come through with someone, and then it transpires into a lot of success at the high school level, and that's what happened for us. Moving on from there, I went to Lindenwood University. I was part of that first national title team they had in 2002. Came back from there, went to Oklahoma Wesleyan. Was a lay coach with Bartlesville when Ponca City was making the big runs, the 4 in a row, so I got to see that from afar.
Back when the guy that you've got to know now is the football coach, you're kind of coaching against him actually wrestling, right?
Correct. And so that's when I met Todd Stidley and Chris and those guys, Carl Lyons. I mean, I've been knowing those guys now for 20 years seems like now. So kind of funny how it comes full circle, but I started a business, pipeline service company in 2008. And got that thing to a point where I don't have to be there day-to-day operation-wise. And I've always had a passion for coaching. I've always been involved in the program somewhere, somehow, some way. Whether that's youth level, I coached at Wesleyan for a year with a guy, and then kind of came back and started helping Pawhuska again. And that's kind of what, when I left Wesleyan and came back to high school level with Pawhuska, had a buddy there coaching, just wanted to help him out. I realized that this is really kind of what I wanted to do, and a job come open at Cleveland, Oklahoma. Will be coming on 3 years now, but I applied, and I don't teach at this point, so I didn't really expect to have much interest in it as far as them and me, and I'll be darned if they didn't call me and go, hey, you want the job? And so I was there 2 years, and now I'm here.
Yeah. So
at Cleveland, my first year, we had one qualifier, and was a rebuild similar to this in a lot of ways. I'm a builder guy. I like to build things. I don't.
You started your own business. I mean, that's probably in your DNA, right?
From nothing, and my whole family's been that way, and so it's enjoyable to me to. It's rough go in the beginning. It always is. But once you get kind of where you kind of want to be, it's fun to look back and go, hey, we actually did something here, not just a bunch of installed, champs. I mean, someone put the time in with those champs somewhere, but at this level where I'm at, I'm putting my hands on them every day and nurturing that growth as we move forward. So
it's interesting, and you talk about Ponca City, and you look history of Oklahoma wrestling and high school especially. The first one that comes to mind is naturally going to be Perry with what they did. Mm-hmm. We got the new age ones of Tuttle. And Stillwater's and Edmond North and all of them doing what they're doing.
Yep.
But you'd be hard pressed when you go back in the history of Oklahoma wrestling outside of maybe Perry to find any more history than you find right here in Ponca City.
It's a very historical program, and that is one of the draws for me to want to take this job or at least apply for it, and then obviously got the opportunity. It's a big program, and there's still a lot of support in Ponca. Mm-hmm. We just got to start developing these kids at a younger age, in which we are, and just get them through the system. And we'll be okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think as a coach, and I think it's every program. You are focused on winning with your team, but the structure you build for the youth programs as well is crucial. And, just a couple of years where that maybe doesn't go as planned can really set you back. Yeah. So when you talk about building in any sport, but I think wrestling may be as important as anyone, as those kids, you got to get those kids, like you said, you started 7 or 8. They got to be out there. They got to be enjoying it. They got to be learning what they need to learn.
Correct.
Because wrestling, especially 6A in the state of Oklahoma, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's the real deal. You get those youth kids, and there's so much information in wrestling. You think about football or basketball, you have timeouts in those sports. You can call timeout, and OC can drop something in basketball, or the basketball could drop something. You got another play. In wrestling, these kids are the offensive coordinator. They are the defensive coordinator. They are the head coach. They are the clock manager for the whole match. Like, we get penalized for timeouts.
And you're having to think, and maybe one of the most extenuating physical demands of any sport. Correct. With, that many minutes on the mat. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is.
And Dan Gable says, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that in a lot of ways. It's a great sport. The character building that it creates, and just the humbleness that you need to have. And there's just so many ingredients to make wrestling fun for kids, number one, and then so many ingredients that have to all kind of mix together to have success as well. So it's fun. It's hard, but it's fun.
Yeah, it is. So, and it's one of those, I never wrestled in high school, went to a small school, but I have fallen in love with it after going to Oklahoma State and watching wrestling there, and then I've fallen in love with the high school, being able to cover Ponca City over the years. It's become one of my favorite sports, and it shows a testament. And my wife and I joke all the time. I would have never thought, 10 years ago, my son wrestling would be a thing, but now it's like, hey, I wouldn't mind him getting in there. But let's talk about the team this year. And, everybody's still trying to fill things out. I mean, I think that's always important to know, is kids are trying to fill you out. Your staff, you're trying to get them doing what you want them to do as well. And the staff is maybe as important as any sport in wrestling, because you guys get out there and wrestle with them.
Correct.
A lot of times. So talk about kind of what this team's doing right now, your personnel as far as what you got wrestling, also your staff, and what your expectations are maybe going forward into next year.
Sure. So let's just start with staff. Obviously myself as the head coach. Zach Miles came with me from Cleveland. He's a young guy, wrestled at Cali for Bo Vest. Graduated from Oklahoma State in the spring of last year. He actually works for my company, so I can kind of dictate his schedule. So I make sure that I have him.
Well, how convenient.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of navigate that schedule for him where I have him when I need him. And then, of course, Antrell Miller, who comes from the Miller family here in Ponca, that he was here last year. He's doing the junior high. Zach is with me at the high school. And then we have Coach Burkett, Corey Burkett, that's been here, I think, for several years, helping us there. So that's the staff for now. We've had a lot of guys come in. Mr. Ken Belmord, Kenny Wheeler, those guys are all longtime Poncans, just to help out here or there when they can. Chris Kaiser, we all know Chris. He came back over Thanksgiving and was able to get in a little bit and work with our boys a little bit, and really just kind of show them the next level and what you guys have got to look forward to if you're planning to go to the next level. So that had one of the AG boys was in there. We had a good group over Thanksgiving break, so it was nice to see a lot of alumni and people. It's always nice to have more people, right, when you're coaching. The more the merrier. And, we have the four that are there every day, but there seems like there's always someone wanting to pop in here or there, In
wrestling, too, there's so many different strategies you can take to a match. There's different weight classes. How you wrestle depend on your weight, your style. Are you defensive or are you more of an attacker? So it's always good to have more people, because you can find somebody maybe can focus and help them find the right technique for them.
So if they can find one thing from Mr. Belmore or anybody for that matter, if it helps them, then you can't really cookie cutter wrestling.
Right.
You got to kind of take the body type or like you said, their strengths or their weaknesses, and you just got to kind of fit it all together individually almost. I mean, you can do some system things, but at the end of the day, you really kind of break that down individually and to their strengths. As far as teams concerned, we lost the Kaiser boys and Mr. Jimmy Swinson, and sure like to have them back one more year. I kidded with I was joking with them in the spring that I was going to file a hardship, see if we can get them one more year, but they didn't think that was a good idea.
Well, it would be really hard to get Chris, speaking of where he's wrestling now.
They didn't think that was a doable thing, but anyway, so we have Ethan Papan come through with that group in the youth and stuff. We have Gavin Weir, Ramsey Ramiro, excuse me. That's our three, Anderson Bivens, that's our 4 starter seniors. We also have a couple, Josue Madrano, Brandon Waller, have a few other seniors that are, close to making the lineup. We got to get a little bit more got to get a lot more
Well,
things going.
and not only that, wrestling's so important to have a good room because
Sure.
even the guys that don't necessarily wrestle all the time, you need them in there to help and push the rest.
Sure. We have a relatively small junior class led by Lance Arbona. And then down at our sophomore class, it's a kind of relatively small class also led by Blake Parker and Noah Lewis. Those two guys are holding down 13 and 20 at this point in time. We may make some moves on that. And then you get down that we have a really big freshman class. I think there's about 18 or 19 kids in that class. Jackson Hernandez, Inelda Rogers got to play a lot of time on the football field. We got Cooper also. He's at that sophomore class too.
There's some talent in that freshman class all across the
Yes.
board, and you bring up like Inel. I can imagine as a wrestling coach, you would love to work with somebody like that has the quickness and the twitch he does.
He's so powerful, so explosive. He's gonna be fun down the road. But getting those guys coming out of football, they've been in there about 3 weeks. They're not in shape.
Yeah, wrestling shape's different.
We'll be ready about hopefully mid-January with those guys.
Yeah.
And some of those guys have been with me since August. They should be ready to go. And we've got some shape issues we got to get cleared up going forward after last night's competition.
One thing I'll ask, I think wrestling, the relationship with football, I think can be very, very important.
It is.
And there is coaches out there that are football coaches. They don't want their kids in the wrestling room.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think for you, it has to be really nice to know you have a football coach that is a former wrestler, and he is pushing those kids. He's honestly a little disappointed when those kids don't get in the room.
Yeah, Coach Rowland's been instrumental in my, my just getting here and getting settled in and all of that. And him and I become really good friends. And it's going to be exciting, I think, to see how we can work together over the next several years, hopefully a long, long time, because I compliment him, he compliments me. I mean, we think a lot alike in a lot of regards, in a lot of circumstances, but it's going to be fun going down the stretch. I have a good feeling about it.
Yeah, so, well, you've coached, but first year at a 6A program, how much different is it here in 6A? And I know you've wrestled a little bit. I think the competition's always the big thing that stands out in 6A wrestling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, wrestling's kind of wrestling, isn't it?
It is. It is. The depth is where you get in 6A that you may not get in a 3A.
Well, yeah, you're wrestling all 14 weight classes, or you really need to. And you're not just wrestling 9 or 10 sometimes.
Well, you get in like small class, and they'll have 4 or 5 dudes, and then the rest of them are kind of average. So if you got average kids, you kind of compete. You wrestling, we might have the toughest schedule in the state of Oklahoma at this point. We're wrestling Edmond North tomorrow night. We've already wrestled Broken Arrow. We've got Stillwater. Wrestled Blackwell last night. You start talking about wrestling some of the best.
And Blackwell's, as good as any half the 6A programs in the state.
They're a top 5 team probably overall, no matter what.
Yeah.
So there's no average kids per se. We got Bixby and District. Just the list goes on and on and on. And that's just the way it is. Like at 6A, you got to find them where you can. And, we've had some opportunities in some matches. We've already wrestled 4 duels. We've had some opportunities in some matches to capitalize, and we didn't. We had some guys on their back, and we got to shore that up. But again, takes time.
All right. Last thing I'll ask you is, coaches all have styles, and usually most wrestling coaches, especially in the state of Oklahoma I talk to, it's attack. go get points, go get bonus points. And I know sometimes you got a wrestler that doesn't do that. I always think about Coach John Smith. He's an attack guy, always has been. But when he had Dean Heil, he probably frustrated him a lot because Dean wasn't he was a kind of defensive guy that would win it and not get you many bonus points. But is that the philosophy you have? Hey, let's attack, let's go get bonus points.
I'm a score points guy, for sure. John and I are friends. I grew up watching John and those guys wrestle. And then I've been going to his camp since I was in the 4th grade. That is my style. But we don't have kids. We don't have a lot of kids here like that. Mm-hmm. And so...
And that develops, once again, the youth, right?
Yeah, and fortunately, I've been around long enough, and I know enough wrestling, we can alter those plans. But right now, we're just trying to be fundamental, stay in good position, don't take bad shots, and hopefully they take a bad shot, we can go score.
Yeah.
So... the philosophy is go score points, but we may be doing it.
Don't give up points, right?
Maybe doing it a little different style right now.
Yeah,
but we'll get there.
If you give up 8 and you only get 2, it doesn't work out too well, does it?
No, 10 bad shots and scoring none is worse than 1 good shot and scoring.
Yeah, because one thing about wrestling, you can end up on your back very, very quickly,
and
especially in high school. Especially when you get to those lighter weights, you can really end up in your back real quick.
Yeah, that is correct.
Well, Coach, really appreciate you coming in. Really enjoyed talking to you. Look forward to seeing what you do here at Ponca City Wrestling, and best of luck throughout the season. Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you again coming up next year.
Same to you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, Coach, appreciate it. Coach Steve Moore, and that's going to do it for this episode of Coach's Corner. It's been brought to you by Skyway Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram here in Ponca City. And until next time, Jordan Woodruff saying so long, and go Cats.